Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.
Rocco, good to see you.
Good to be back, man. Thank you.
What the hell is going on, man? What is up with this society? Can you give me some clarity?
Yeah, I could try. Society, in my opinion, look, this whole year has completely polarized society, right? I mean, we've had two sides on the election, two sides when it comes to COVID. There's a lot of people in the middle that don't really want to talk about it because they just get, if you disagree with one of the sides slightly or the other side, you're vilified by the opposite. It's just, in my life, look, I'm 43 years old and I've been through elections and been through different shit happening in the world. I was in law school when 9/11 happened, and this is the most polarized and emotional that I've seen society. And I think polarization's one thing. People talk about we were polarized during Obama, and I don't think it was that bad. The emotion involved in what's going on has made this year and this election a complete shit show. People are so emotionally charged because of, being locked down for how long, and all the shit that's been going on has just created this kind of like mental fuckery in their heads, and they don't know how to process it or deal with it. And I think it's just created this worldview that people have that is completely distorted. If that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, it does. It does. Speaking of worldview, when you say that, that's a global way of looking at everything in its entirety. I think people are generally looking at this year as somehow, and maybe rightly or wrongly, tying events happening this year all together. And that, I think television's kind of leading people to think that way.
Yeah,
you agree?
I mean, the media has fucking destroyed this. In my opinion, look, I think the media has destroyed this country because on both sides, there's not one side of the media that's
we're
right.
one side. It's a people. We're one.
Right, exactly. But then you see what the media is doing, and it's whatever they can do to get people to watch their channel or to create controversy or to create buzz, and it's doing a disservice to the American people because, let's be honest, the majority of people don't want to take the time to do their own independent research, to try and understand from a legal standpoint, a philosophical standpoint, a medical standpoint. They want to just take what the media says at face value because they believe, right? They believe that these are the experts. They're journalists. That's their job, is to report facts. That's what their perceived job is. The problem is, we don't have journalists anymore. We have sensationalists. They purely manipulate whatever they can to create the story they want. And that's caused, look at the shit that's going on with the election, with COVID, with the economy. The media has just turned it into a complete shit show. I mean, you can't make heads or tails of it. You turn on one channel, it's one complete worldview. You turn on a different channel, the worldview is completely different. And it's like, how can it be so? How could one country, America, have these media outlets that see the world so differently, and then people just pick the side without trying to understand why they're picking it, if what they're agreeing with is correct or even factually there? It's just it's nuts to me. And I've been caught up in it. I watch certain news channels and tend to start believing. I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any fucking sense. And you got to back up a little bit and start looking at things from a different perspective. But it's hard for people to do, and they don't want to do it. And the media knows that, so they can create the narrative because they know that 80% of people are just going to believe the narrative they create, and that's the problem.
Are you surprised at all at how close in terms of numbers the two sides are? I mean, there's not a big disparity in the rank and file of the apparent two sides. They're pretty even.
Yeah, you mean number of people?
You could use the voting as the barometer. The election was extremely close.
Yeah, right. I mean, 72 to 7 or 73 to 76 million.
So if that is a good barometer of the rank and file of people that believe a certain way or lean a certain way, if that's the only barometer we can really use, I'm amazed at how polarized, but also
Yeah.
how equally polarized
Yeah.
it is.
It's-
One doesn't have an advantage really over the other in a big way.
No, not at all. I completely agree. And and what's interesting is, you have these numbers that are very close, but if you add them together, right, looking at 150, we'll say 150 million, I believe there's probably 130 million that are within 5 degrees of one another.
Certainly.
There's
Good
center
point.
right, center left.
Good point.
The other 30 million are the ones that are way on the outskirts, which are the loudest, which are the ones that the media panders to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just because I definitely was more conservative in my younger years. I've come to more center right. I mean, that's really where my political affiliation is.
Right.
We've talked about this before.
Right.
And I think there's, and I agree with people on the political left or the center left, but there's those sides that are so diabolically opposed, that are the loudest, that is what the media, because the media knows that you can't pander to the center right or the left. We're kind of the logical,
Right.
We the way I would say it is, we don't get involved necessarily in the bullshit. Like, we kind of see the world how we see it. You're not going to convince me one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
I have my opinions. I look at facts my way. It's the people on the extremes is where the media can get them charged up, get them fired up. That's where they get the votes from. That's where they get the argument from. It's just, it's a completely interesting time in the world right now. Like this, like 2020 has taught me so much about people, the world, the way the media works, like what I should and shouldn't be doing or thinking about. It's just crazy. And every day I feel like I understand it less and less, which is nuts.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
You were talking about the two sides
Yeah.
there. I've always believed something like this, and I'd be interested to hear your idea.
Okay.
Maybe I'm full of shit, but that's what I've always believed.
Okay.
The extremes of both sides of the parties are not generally people that are that wrapped up into commerce and capitalism and the ins and outs of making the country go.
Yeah.
The achievers, the earners.
That's a great point.
I think the extremes tend to be people that are very vocal about wants and their feelings.
Yes.
But I don't
Great.
know if the people making society, the engine of society, while they may be a conservative, they may be a progressive, they're not on the extreme levels. Now, the argument can be made, though, that there are some uber wealthy individuals, this little group of individuals, that cater to the extremes on both parties and manipulate them, because I think from a mental process, those folks are more manipulatable.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
But the engine of the country is the center and so many degrees left and so many degrees right. That's the core, I think, of where the brain trust of the country is. I think that's where the core of the of just the mechanics of how we move forward.
The economic engine sits in that spot.
Yes,
I agree.
Good way of putting it. And that's not a conservative statement, because there's a lot of amazing economics on the progressive side too.
Absolutely.
It's just the extremes are not wired like the center is. And the extremes are causing the fucking problem.
Yeah. So
for all of us.
I
And we're letting them.
completely agree. And, I'll even take it one step further and, be it right or wrong, what I'm going to say is the people, the people in the middle, we're the economic engine. We're the ones that are out there doing shit, right? We're running businesses. We're trying to make a living. We're trying to make this world better. We're trying to do things. The people that are on the extremes have the time to go to the extremes because they don't have all that other shit going on, so to speak. That's what this is just, I'm not trying to make a blanket statement.
I would concur with that.
There are many people on the extremes that have a ton of shit going on, but just my perspective, the optics from me is the people I see out there on social media in the world, they're the ones that dig into these conspiracy theories and go into these Facebook Lives and all these crazy shit. I'm like, how do you even have time to fucking do this?
Right.
Just focus on the shit you should be focusing on. Politicians sit on the extremes, right? I feel like politicians sit on the extremes. There are wealthy people that sit on the extremes. But to your point, I agree that the economic engine of America, we sit center right, center left, in my opinion. At least that's how I look at the world. But those extremes, right, they're not driving the economic engine. So they have the time to become extreme. Because look, if you want to really look into the rabbit hole or go down the rabbit hole, it's a fucking clusterfuck, and you can get lost in it. I mean, I used to get lost in these rabbit holes, and you can come up with every conspiracy theory possible, and people do that, and then they start believing it. Then they start putting it out there on social media, so that more people believe it, and it creates this domino effect that just, I don't think, does a service to the country. It's created, and look, and Trump pandered to it. Let's be honest. There's a lot of people that pandered, and so did the left. And it's, as we were talking about before the show, we need to move on as a country. Like, okay, the election's over. If fuckery was afoot, like you said, we got to figure that out. I agree. We need to make sure that the integrity of the election is maintained. But at this point in time, we just need to move on as a country. We just need to accept the results. If for some reason there's this massive fraud that's being talked about, then it needs to come out. We need to understand what it is. But we can't keep saying it's there. But okay, affidavits, I get that is evidence, right? There's, people talk about, affidavits aren't evidence. Well, they actually are in a court of law, but we need more. If you're going to make these claims, we need to see it. Yeah. And if you don't have it, let's just move on. Let's do the transition. Let's just move the country forward. So, because I don't really think, like, people were afraid of what would happen with a Biden presidency, or what would it's just, I don't think the world's going to change much in the next 4 years. Regardless if Biden's the winner, or if for some reason Trump would flip the vote, I don't think the world's going to change much.
No.
I think 2022, there will be a change in probably power, I think, in Congress. And I think that's where you'll start seeing shifts. But I think the next 2 years, I'm not too concerned about whoever is in the White House.
Right.
Doesn't really bother me that much.
Right. I think life has taught me that it really never changed my life who was there.
Yeah, I mean, really.
Yeah. I mean, I like them, don't like them, don't care.
Right.
It never really much of a change that I would see or feel as an individual citizen.
No.
But damn it, don't people now feel like it's a personal affront when their candidate didn't win?
Well, yeah, and that's where, look, that's something Trump may have done really well, is right, get people to almost feel like they're part of his team. Like, I don't think any president's ever created a following like Trump has, right? I mean, Obama was, one of those types of presidents. I think Trump created this feeling like, if you were a Trump supporter, like, you were a motherfucking Trump supporter, and you were on that team, and you felt like you were part of that team.
You think that's healthy?
I don't think it is. No, I mean, that's the problem, right? I mean,
rock bands do that. I think when you're saying that, like, I think of the band Kiss, who when they
started, Kiss Army.
When they started, though, they were like ostracized. So if you belong to that Kiss Army, you took a lot of shit.
Yeah,
it became acceptable once they got successful.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
But I remember taking caustic. People were caustic toward me for that, as many other people. But maybe Trump supporters are wearing it as a badge of honor or an identity or something.
Well, I think, because think about it, right? I mean, Trump spoke to Middle America in 2016. Those are the people that weren't really spoken to by politicians. When you look at it, Romney didn't really talk to them. Obama didn't talk to them. So, and that's a big part of this country.
Right.
That's part of the engine.
That's a good point.
Trump spoke to them and made them feel like you matter. And that's where I think he got that energy from. And he I believe he was doing things for the country. Whether he approached them the right way or not, that'll history will decide.
Absolutely.
History will tell us if he was a good president or not. People in the media, you and I, we can't determine whether he's a good president or not, because we have different viewpoints from other people. I can debate with my friends, and they have a different. They think he's terrible. I didn't think he was terrible. I liked his policies. They hated his policies.
Right.
History will make that decision.
Right.
But to your point, I think people are butthurt because it's like, it's their team. Their team lost. Like, if you're a diehard Steelers fan, the Steelers lose in the Super Bowl, you're fucking pissed. And this is the Super Bowl. The election's the Super Bowl.
Did this all happen out of boredom, though, because of the pandemic?
I
Had there not been a pandemic, I'm not going to say who would win or lose, but if there wasn't a pandemic, would we have been so involved on a every man, woman, and child basis like we are now?
No, I don't think so. I don't think we would have had the voter turnout we did. Because one, look at all the mail-in ballots, right, that came out. That was a huge number. I think people had nothing else to do than watch politics, listen to politics, read about politics. Like I'm a pretty, I like to think like I'm into politics, but this is by far the most I've ever been involved in trying to understand what the fuck's going on.
Most people.
And I'm one of those people that I typically do that, and this is way more this year. And even, I've had more discussions with friends over the election this year than I have in any election in the past. So I think people are, we've had all this time. We've been stuck in our houses the first part of the year, and Trump was on TV every day. Mm-hmm. And the media was attacking him every day. Mm-hmm. It just became, it was a spectacle. It was like you were watching it was like a spectator sport, right? You're watching this happen. You're watching this unfold. He's doing daily press briefings. You have this pandemic happening that's kind of, scaring one part of the population. The other part of the population, this is fucking fake. The rest of us, the most like, yeah, it is something, but we've got to figure out what to do about it. If we didn't have this pandemic, I think people wouldn't have given a shit about this election as much as, because think about everything that happened right this year. You had the pandemic, you had George Floyd's untimely death, you've had all the protests, the riots, you've had cities burning down, you've had people try and make a fucking city within a city. Chaz, and when would that ever happen in this world? So everything that could literally possibly go wrong in a year, in an election year nonetheless, happened this year. Mm-hmm. Think about what that does to the average American. Take an average American. They have family of four, have decent jobs. They just kind of live their life. Now you say there's this virus out there that could really kill you, so you got to stay in our homes. You can't work. We're going to send you money. You can collect unemployment. Now we've had police brutality. We've had riots. We've had cities burning down. We've had people feeling unsafe. Think about what that does to the psyche. The psyche of the average. That does not deal with problems like that on a daily basis. Like, you and I are business owners, right? We understand how to deal with problems. Not like that, but there's shit I have to deal with every single day. Running businesses, you have problems you constantly have to deal with. So you understand how to quickly sort through information and find out what matters and what doesn't matter. Right. When you have people that don't do that on a day-to-day basis, they're part of a company and they have a job to do, and when they come home from that job, they focus on their family. They don't have, I'm not saying that it's a lack of intelligence, they're just not, their brain isn't trained in a way to decipher problems quickly. So now all this information's coming in, and they're just like, what the fuck? Like, what do I believe? What do I do?
It's an overload.
It's a complete mental overload. And that's why you see these people on social media going crazy, because they don't know how else to get it out. Like, that's almost like therapy to them. It's like them venting. But then it just creates this confrontational atmosphere on social media. So then it just creates a bigger problem. And it's been insane to watch.
It has been insane. I have to also ask the question, is how much of this is symptomatic of the pandemic, but also symptomatic of the growth of and the influence social media has in the way we live our life, and the de-emphasizing of radio and TV in favor of internet-based and unregulated, and unfortunately, being the New Wild West out there, there's the traditional norms of civility that were in radio and TV are not on the web. So it's a whole new. I also like to think maybe the generation above me, my parents' generation, them dying off and not having the influence in business and politics, where there was more of a civil way of dealing with each other. Yeah. Every generation afterwards is more accepting of caustic bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely. Social media has had a huge problem. I mean, think about, I was in law school during Bush v. Gore, and social media was kind of, I think there was MySpace at that time or something. Right. Can you imagine if Bush v. Gore happened today with social media? Like, that's the problem. And you have these platforms that give everybody and anybody a voice. So you can become your own media company, right? And I watch people. I've become this like student of just conversation, like watching people post shit on Instagram or Facebook, and then I'll go and just read the comments. Be like, oh, there's one person I'm thinking, I'm not going to say the person's name, but there's one person I'm thinking in particular that'll share all these conspiracy theories, like articles from like 3 years ago that seem like they're relevant now, but they're not. And there'll be 30 people commenting like, I hope this is going to happen. I'm thinking, holy fuck, did you even look at the information? The date of the article was 2012. Like, and then people are like, yep, this is happening. This is happening. This is coming down. Like, I got word. I'm like, no, this is the problem. Then you get these people. I'm thinking of one in particular. This gentleman posted something and there was 120 some comments on this. It was a purely bullshit article and I'm thinking to myself, there's 120 people that took the time to go read his post, not really read the article, but then start a conversation on that post. And that's the problem. I mean, think about that. Like, that didn't happen in the past.
No.
You know? I mean, it just didn't happen.
So it would appear to me that we need to have, in some way, an understanding of the responsibility we have before we put content on the web. And when you say that, of course, all these connotations of Big Brother and all this, how dare you say that? It's, that's regulation. But we're looking at now complete unregulation. Is that a word? Or dereg? And there's no deregulation. We're unregulated behavior.
Yes.
Where it's not kind of working.
No, it's not. People need to learn how to self-govern and self-regulate. And that comes to, and that plays a lot into this pandemic as well, right? We need to take some accountability for ourselves, our actions, via online, in our personal life, our health, the way we operate in the world. People have gotten so accustomed to blaming someone else, to not taking responsibility for their actions, what they post, and it's just like,
where did that come from?
I don't fucking know. Like, that's a great question. I feel like people have gotten lazy. Accountability's hard, right? That means I'm saying I can be judged. If I'm taking accountability for something, I do something wrong, that means I can be criticized or judged for it. But if I say it's not my fault, I can't take judgment or criticism.
Has it been a slow movement toward unaccountability? Because I can go back and look at it like things that happen in society during my lifetime. I think about Clinton having Lewinsky in that affair in 98. And then as a younger person, then watching people I admired in my life that were a generation above me make excuses for that because that was their guy.
Yeah.
And then sitting back and looking and going, wow. But I'm sure that had I been old enough, I'm sure there was people making excuses for Nixon's behavior then.
Yeah, of course.
Not as many, but I think there's more of that. Now, you compare the defending of Clinton compared to how people defend bad behavior of Trump. People will go to the mat for Trump.
Yeah,
and more
absolutely.
of them than the Democrats would have for Clinton in that era. There's more people willing to go to the mat for their person, their guy, their candidate, their friend, their leader, whatever it is.
Yeah.
People weren't doing it in that manner for Clinton, and definitely probably not for Nixon, right?
No, not at all.
So we're willing to go to the mat now for a stranger.
Well, here's the thing. I
don't get it.
No, I mean, I'll tell you what I think about that. I think people will go to Trump's defense, and I have, I'll be the first to admit, I have in the past, because we knew what we were getting with him. It's not like Trump came up and said, I'm this presidential guy, and I speak well, and I don't rant, and then all of a sudden he becomes president and he turns into this complete shit show.
Okay.
He was a shit show before, and he was a smart business guy. He got elected at the right time. Like, he spoke to middle America.
Okay.
He spoke like middle America. That's the difference. Like, he wasn't, and he said, I'm not a politician. People seem to forget that we knew that going in. I knew from day one in 2017, when he took his inauguration, he's not going to be presidential. But in my opinion, and this is me from my perspective, I don't give a shit. I want someone that puts policies in place.
Well, you're results oriented.
Yeah, I'm a results oriented person. Exactly. Like, the policies that they help me, my family, and those closest to me. That's what I care about. And call me what you want to call me. If I'm, if I'm not looking at the world and if I'm looking at the world in the wrong way, that so be it. That's how I look at the world. I think people go to bat for Trump because they voted for him because they knew who he was. And now people are attacking who he is.
Okay.
And it's like, wait a minute, we put this person in office. Like it's not like this was a shock to us.
Okay.
And I think that's the reason. And I think that's, in the past, like every other president, is presidential. So you hold them to this standard of,
right.
And then they do something shitty. And you're like, wait a minute, like that, there's some cognitive dissonance there. It's like, wait a minute, like, no. You can't do that shit. Like if Trump got a blowjob I'd be like, yeah, of course. Like you would just expect it. Like it was just, that's something.
So character didn't matter when it came to electing him, but it was expected of politicians prior.
That's my viewpoint. Yeah, like I think so. I don't think people elected Trump for his character. Okay. I think people elected.
So was it
Trump.
A protest vote based upon everything else that had happened before him?
I think that was a lot of it. Yeah, I think people were tired of the bullshit. Tired of the Washington bullshit, tired of politicians.
And tired of the candidate running against him because she represented
everything that
they didn't
hated.
like.
Exactly. Right. And he was an opportunist. He did I believe he did good things for this country. Mm-hmm. I do. I believe he was a good president. I believe he could have done things better. Absolutely. No one's perfect.
Right.
And if you hold someone up to be perfect, look in the mirror. No one is. You got to start looking at the world that way.
Here's where I'll slightly differ with you because looking at I can look at policy measures that personally for me, I'm fine with. Not all of them, but I can look at some that I'm good with. Where I think he failed, and this is my personal belief, he had an opportunity to communicate in a way that could have made him even more emboldened to the American people. But he lost some people that were willing to go to bat for him.
Yeah.
That probably voted for him the first time. I think,
no,
because of the way he conducted his communication. I'm not blaming it entirely on the medium of Twitter. I'm not looking at any particular battles he had, but the cumulative effect of being so caustic himself. I think the caustic was worse than the narcissism. I think it's okay talking about himself all the time.
Yeah.
If he wasn't willing to use verbiage that indicated a confrontation. Some people love it.
Yeah.
And it emboldened probably his base and made them even more endearing.
Okay.
Or made him more endearing to them. But I think he lost a lot of more moderate thinking people to the point where, like, I can't stand to listen to him talk. Some people wanted presidential talk.
No,
Rocco.
I
They
agree.
wanted to feel good about the person. They wanted to feel good about that.
But let me challenge you for a moment.
Okay.
Think about from just put yourself in his shoes, and no one ever does this.
Okay.
He's been purely attacked by the media.
Definitely.
From the moment he decided he's going to run for president.
Definitely.
He's never had a fair shake, and I truly believe that. And I'm not sitting here saying I'm a Trump supporter. I voted for him, yes, and I can admit that because that's.
But you're not going to the mat for him.
No. I mean, look, I want the best president for the time we're in, right? And if that becomes Biden, so be it. That's great. Like, I want whomever is in the Oval Office to succeed, because if they succeed, the country succeeds.
Right.
I would never look at a president and hope you fail.
Of course not.
That's what people did with Trump.
It's silly. You're absolutely correct.
They wanted him to fail.
You're absolutely
so he was
correct.
Constantly being attacked. So of course, like, it's human nature, right? The alpha male, and that's what I believe Trump is. That's another reason why I think he triggered so many people, because we live in this society now where it's not okay to be the alpha male. Like, you get vilified for it. And we talked about this a little bit last time, but people are like, oh, you got to be nice and we've got to, treat. It's like, no, we need some people to stand up a little bit more. And he stood up he stood up for himself.
Yeah.
He stood up for things he believed in.
Yeah.
And he was constantly getting attacked. So when you attack someone that's a type A, they don't sit there and take it. Like
I understand all of that. But the average guy doesn't get that, though. That's too deep thinking.
No,
for the
I
average
understand
guy.
that. I understand that. But I just try and put it into perspective. Like I would have probably said a lot worse shit if I had to put up with the media. Like he could have literally cured cancer, and they would have blamed him for not curing it fast enough.
Right.
Like it's
that'd be part of his legacy, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's become and what the whole Twitter thing, I don't know if you saw his interview with Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports.
I didn't see it. It's recent, right?
This was during opening day. It was opening day in the spring.
Okay.
I wished everybody watched that interview. It was a 20-minute interview at the White House. It was just Trump being a dude, like being a real guy. And Portnoy asked him, he's like, hey, do you ever regret tweeting? He's like, all the time. He's like, absolutely. He's like, the retweets always get me in trouble. He's like, because I look at him like, oh, this looks good. And I retweet and like, yeah, that was false. He's like, oh shit, but it already went out there. But he also said, he's like, I use Twitter. He's like, I can't remember how many million people, but he says, it's the only way I can get out my side of the story.
Right.
Because the media has treated me unfairly. Every side of the media has attacked him and twisted what he's done. So it's his only way he feels to communicate. And it was an interesting interview because it's one point in time where I'm like,
he's real.
I wish people would watch this because it was that real moment. Because even he was talking about, because Portnoy asked him, like, what did you ever, regret doing this? He's like, oh, my life was perfect before this. And he gave this story about he went to this right after he announced running. He went to this charity event that he went to every year in New York.
Okay.
And he came in and he got booed. And his wife was like, why? Didn't understand. He's like, because I'm running for office. Like every year before that, people loved him because he donated money. It was like he was the star.
Right.
He decides to run for office. He gets booed.
Right.
And it was just like, it was that real moment of him as a man and being vulnerable. And to me, he needed to do more of that as a president.
Okay. Show that.
And I get
articulate that.
Articulate. And I get that. Look, if someone attacks me or someone I love or someone close to me, I'm going to go to the mat for them or for myself. Like I'm going to stand up and fight back, but I can also be vulnerable, right? I can also open up and show my wounds and show the cuts and the bruises. Trump had a hard time doing that. And I think if he would have done that a little bit more, admitted where he fucked up or,
he can't admit that he made a mistake. That's a very rare time.
Yeah.
That interview with Portnoy had to be a rare interview for him.
It was really, and it was such a, and it was funny too, because at the end, Portnoy said, hey, my dad hates you. Can we call him? And they literally FaceTimed Portnoy's dad. And it was just an interesting moment because he's like, yeah, of course, let's do it. Like, of course. And they called his dad and Portnoy told him that, yeah, my dad does not like you. He's not a supporter of you. And they called him and Trump was very nice to the guy. And it was a moment that, and I said that about Romney too. Like when Romney ran, there was that movie that came out about him.
Yeah.
And I watched the movie, I'm like, man, if everybody would have watched this movie, there would have been a different outcome because it showed who he really was. And Romney wasn't good at articulating who he was as a person. He was presidential and he was polished, but people wanted to see the real side of him.
It looked like an empty suit to me.
Yes, exactly. They wanted to see a real person there, and he didn't come across as that.
Okay.
In this movie, I think it was called Mitt. It was, you saw the real side of him. I remember watching it after the election. I think I was telling one of my friends at the time, if everybody would have watched this, I think the results would have been different because you saw who he was as a man, and that's important when you're electing a president. You need to know who you're electing. You need to know the man. And that's what always worried me about Biden, right? I don't think, not that I'm saying he's a bad guy. Like I think he has good intentions. I think he is a moderate. I think, I hope he does well. But,
he's always been a moderate.
Yeah, absolutely. But he didn't show us who he was.
Is he able to anymore?
Well, that's a whole other question.
It's not a joke. I'm asking a serious question.
No, that's a whole other question. And what scares me the most about this election is that it wasn't a vote for Biden. It was a vote not for Trump.
Right.
And that's a dangerous game
to
play as a country, I believe.
All right, so let's talk about the election in particular a little bit here, the mechanics of it.
Okay.
So we talked offline. My stance.
Yeah.
I think the Republican Party knew what was coming once the pandemic started in terms of... So I grew up in a Democratic town. Died in the wool Democratic. Most of my family outside of my father, God rest his soul. He was the sole Republican here. But this town, the Democrats ran Pittsburgh. Yeah. They've ran the big cities in this country. The Democratic Party has a way of operating. Mm-hmm. There are always been stories about ballot box stuffing, about manipulation of ballots, doing anything possible to get more people on the voting rolls. Yep. I have no proof any of that stuff was ever real. But the Democratic Party was very aggressive to get out the vote. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping it was all legitimate.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it always wasn't. But that's the framework the Democrats have always used when they're paying attention.
Yeah.
And they were paying attention to this election more than any. And when the opportunity presented itself to introduce mail-in ballots because of the pandemic, they went for it with gusto.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the Republicans had the operation in place to try to work with their base and do the same thing. Now, I didn't see it. And that fact alone leads me to believe that they might have just blown this election by their own incompetence. Really nothing to do with either candidate. It was the operation of the party and how it got out the vote to compete. And I think they had their ass handed to them in a mechanical way of orchestrating their party.
No, I mean, that's a really good point, because, I mean, and we talked about this offline, and I'm thinking about it a little bit differently now, is you're right. You know, the Democrats knew that people were going to be afraid to come out and vote, so they encouraged mail-in voting.
And they were able to do that in key states that had Democratic legislatures and governors.
Exactly. And then the Republicans assumed they would get people to come out on election day. But that assumption, I mean, Trump still got more votes than any president ever has. The same with Biden.
Right.
But I think they could have played it. Instead of trying to invalidate mail-in voting and saying this is terrible, it's fraud, maybe just do it better than the Democrats. Like, get the vote out there. And maybe that is, to your point, where they screwed up, is they didn't take it serious. That mail-in voting was going to have this much of an impact. And obviously, I mean,
how could they not have seen that, though?
I mean, I don't know. That's a good question. Like, I don't know. Maybe they were relying too much on what they thought the courts would do, or the legislatures would do. Because look in Pennsylvania. I mean, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania basically changed the law, which they can't do. So if that, I don't know where that case stands right now, but if that goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, that'll be overturned. Like, the law is very clear in PA, the ballots, whether they're mail-in or have to be received by 8 p.m. on election night. You can't say postmarked and then received. You
it's all
can't
nonsense.
Change the law.
It's all crazy bullshit.
But yeah, and I think the Republicans did do a not very good job
up front.
Yes, exactly.
They react now.
Exactly. They should have mobilized and been proactive. And
where's all this energy beforehand?
Yes.
Mobilizing your base and analyze. And if all these, I don't know, laws were going into place for mail-in ballots that were potentially corruptible, they should have been attacking all that stuff at the time this was being put in place.
Well, the problem with that, though, is you can't make a case until you have a reason to make a case. Like, that's why, like part of this is, and again, I'm not an election law expert. Let's just put that caveat out there. I'm a business lawyer, but there are certain things, like they're saying, like, why are these cases taking so long? Well, there's certain cases they can't bring the case until the fraud happens or till the action in question happens. So when they changed all these laws, in certain states, there may not have been a claim to bring at that point in time. They had to wait till the election to say this, to invalidate, because nothing happened yet. So you have to have a cause of action, is what I'm saying. You have to have, a prima facie case of something, a cause of action to bring, and maybe it was just premature doing it beforehand. Now, again, I don't know what's going to happen with all these cases out there. Maybe some of them will matter. Some of them probably won't. I don't think it's going to do anything for the election, but I think we do need to figure out what happened, if anything.
Okay.
But back to your point with the Republicans, I think there was a lack of effort, but I think there was also a lack of opportunity. There wasn't a lot of things they could do at that point in time, and I think the things they could have done, they didn't do.
Okay.
And that's the problem, I think.
Okay. So what do you really think, now that you've had a couple of weeks to digest it, and you're seeing things? You saw Rudy Giuliani and his crew had a press conference there, and you've heard a bunch of accusations.
Yeah.
What's your gut telling you? What's fact and what's bullshit? At this moment, as we sit here today, what do you surmise?
I mean, look, affidavits are affidavits, right? I mean, those are legitimate statements of people sworn under penalty of perjury that are admissible in court in certain instances. So if they have all these affidavits of people saying that these things happen, I think that's an issue. What I don't like that's going on is they're making these very large accusations of software manipulation and data manipulation, and the servers were taken in Germany. Okay, well then why aren't we hearing anything about it? And I just watched this morning Sidney Powell on, I think it was Glenn Beck, I was watching on YouTube, and he asked me, he's like, when are we going to see the actual evidence, and what are the court cases you're going to bring? And she keeps saying, well, in the next week we're going to bring it out. And it's they're talking a lot of game, but I haven't seen, affidavits are one thing, but actually having proof that data was manipulated, software was hacked or manipulated, that's what I want to see. And I'm not, my gut, I don't know, honestly, I don't know that it's there.
So are we to believe that the Republicans knew that these voting machines potentially had issues ahead of time, but we're only talking about it now because it didn't serve our purpose and we're being egregied by it?
That's a good point.
The argument can be made that if they were questionable, if the process, and that goes back to the whole paper ballot thing, or the mail-in ballot, and we're going to get there about what we should do going forward. But knowing that was going to happen before the election, why was it not addressed then? If this particular voting company has foreign interests or maybe in whatever, we've obviously known that fucking fact for a while.
Yeah.
No one seemed to care ahead of the election because we didn't know if our person was going to win.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's always the problem, right? I mean, everybody cries foul after the fact. I mean, it happened in 2016. It's happening now, and it's just like it's par for the course. The other problem is the elections aren't handled on a national level.
That's a problem.
But it's interesting because so many people assume the federal government. It's like no, that's not how it works. The states control, so the states.
That's why there's electoral college to gather it at the end, right?
Exactly, and it's so two states don't control the federal government basically, and it's and that comes down to the whole federalist system, like what the national government's supposed to do and what the state governments are supposed to do, and it's I don't think a lot of people understand that division, and they want to just they want to blame the federal government when the state's fucked up. It's like, well, wait a minute, it's the state's responsibility.
Okay. So you're a big states rights guy.
Yeah,
I generally am. But let's go down the fucking rabbit hole.
Let's do it. I like rabbit holes.
All right. The pandemic has made me take a look at states' rights a little differently because I think, in my opinion, that the pandemic being a national threat could be viewed as a war, or could be an instrument of war for any country trying to do us harm.
Sure.
It can follow, I think, to me, it falls under that federalist agenda for protection of the people. I don't want the federal government doing much, but protecting us is one thing.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on putting a pandemic style or epidemic plan in place that when this kind of stuff happens, the federal government has the authority to supersede states in this instance in a very limited and restricted way in order to take care of the people of the country? We become U.S. citizens at that moment more than a Pennsylvania resident.
Okay.
I think that nothing like that is in place, and you're relying on the federal government to work with states, and that just doesn't work in most instances, let alone when there's a crisis.
So I would have to see the plan to start, because I think that's a slippery slope. I think if you start giving the federal government more power in certain instances, where do you draw the line? Like, that's what's happening with states right now. Like, you give them an inch, they take a yard. I mean, we went from 15 days of slow to spread to 3 months, and now some states are going back into lockdown. So that's what always scared me about this whole thing. Is when you give government power over our individual rights, or you give the federal government power over states' rights, when do they give it back?
Well, let's put the rights aside for a second. What about just the implementation of, like, supplies? Like, why is there a ventilator problem? There shouldn't be a ventilator problem. When it comes to supplies over interstate commerce, which the federal government regulates interstate commerce, yes, we should have a plan in place for that. The problem we have, and what people seem to forget, is we're America. We have 50 states. People do what the fuck they want here. Like, this is what, like, people don't get that. Like, we are a very independent nation. Right.
We were founded on the principle of independence. And to try and get 50 states and the people of 50 states two work together will never work. And this is just me speaking candidly. I don't think lockdowns worked or will ever work because no one's ever going to fully lock down.
Right.
There's always going to be people that go out. There's always going to be people that violate it. So it makes it miserable for the rest of the people that are trying to follow it. But we can't, we're not willing to be that self-aware as a nation or as a population to say, we're never going to do this. So let's just figure out a different way.
Okay.
Because, I mean, if you look at the lockdowns in the spring, right, let's take that for a second. You could still go to Target, Walmart, Home Depot with hundreds of people.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you...
It didn't make sense.
It's none of it made sense. And even the stuff we're doing now, it doesn't make sense, right? You know, okay, we can... You have to wear a mask from the time you walk into a restaurant till you sit down, and you can take it off.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, why? What's the science that supports that? Like, what is, you know, there's so many things that, you know, don't logically make sense to me. And I think as a nation, we try to just throw everything at the wall, and none of it stuck.
Yeah.
And if lockdowns work, we don't need to be going back into them again. And if they didn't work, why are we going back into them again? It just, there's so many things that don't make sense. And to have a federal response, you can try. Like a federal response when it comes to supplies and helping states, that's one thing. A federal like mandate of these are the new rules, people are going to say F you.
Yeah. I don't know about like the federal government making laws to infringe individual liberties. I just think that there wasn't a plan to help people, or even, I know it's a slippery slope because Pennsylvania has a certain amount of infection rates, but Montana has a different infection rate. So if it's a federal mandate that we're going to shut down for 3 weeks, it really doesn't make sense to penalize the people in Montana and their businesses.
Right.
But it just seems there's no cohesion, and it shuts society down. This is a big time problem.
Yeah.
And the leadership lines are real unclear to the average citizen.
Well, right. And look, like you said, the Montana PA example, right? That's the problem we have. Every state's different. Every population of the state is different. So to have one federal response will unfairly treat certain segments of the population. So how do you justify that, right? And you know, when we were going through this pandemic, and these states were doing things their own ways, and then praising the federal government, then hating the federal government, it was like no one was taking accountability.
Right.
Like, if it was going well, it was the states. If it was going poorly, it's the federal government. It's like they all fucked up. The federal government did, the states did. We need to own that now. No one got this right.
What about something like a mask mandate? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, you know, I don't know because that's what Biden's floating right now. How can you enforce that?
And that's the thing. Look, so again, I have certain views on masks. I have clients that are doctors, and I've spoken to, and I haven't found two people to vehemently agree. Everybody looks at it differently. Like they work, they don't work, they kind of work. Depends on the type. They got to be fitted a certain way. They got to be cleaned a certain way. Like, okay, let's just be real. You're not going to be, how are you going to enforce that, right? Like when PA came out, we have to wear masks in our house now if we have people in our house that don't live with us.
Yeah.
Who the fuck is going to enforce that?
Right.
And police are not going to enforce that.
No.
Like they have to live in those communities.
There's no manpower either, even if they wanted to.
No, and it's just like and that to me, like when they had that press conference this week, it's that was in my mind one step too far. I think in the spring we did what we had to do. We didn't know what this was about. Like, okay, fuck, we got to lock down. So people put up with it. Started opening back up. Okay, we got an understanding of it, right? We're starting to figure things out. We kind of know how to treat this. You know, in the spring, Fauci said, you know, we'll be able to get back to normal when we have a vaccine, an effective vaccine. What was it? Last Sunday, he says, well, even that we have these 2 effective vaccines, we're probably still going to have to wear masks and social distance for a while. So they keep moving the goalposts. And this is where I think people are getting frustrated.
There's no question.
I don't think people are
they don't believe
heartless.
Anymore. They don't believe anymore.
Yeah, like that's it. Like it's like I'm not like I want to protect people. Like I'm not heartless, but I know the people I'm around every day. And when you keep changing the rules and moving the goalposts and not telling people they can't celebrate with their families on Thanksgiving, like that's really dangerous in my opinion. Like, you can't have more than 10 people, or you can't have more than 2 households. You can't sing and chant. Like, where the fuck are we living?
It's very draconian.
Yes, and it's like, it's one thing. I would respect politicians so much more if they would get up there and say, you know what, look, we understand not everybody's going to listen to this. We're pleading with you.
Yeah.
We have to do what we can. We're in this situation. The more of you that wear masks and social distance and do these things, the better we're going to be. We know we can't enforce it, so we're not going to put these ridiculous rules in place that's just going to piss people off. We're pleading with you out of your own common decency and self-accountability and self-governing to do these things.
Right.
I would be like, you know what?
Right.
I respect that. Let's do what we can do. But when you start saying you have to wear a mask in your house and you can't have Thanksgiving and do things virtually, and now you have these corporations like Zoom put out a post on Facebook, here's how you have a virtual Thanksgiving. Like, are you kidding me? Like, it's gone too far. People will only put up with this type of shit for a certain period of time. I think we've gotten past that. And I think these last set of rules were the straw that broke the camel's back. And that's why I think, like, you know, I've been out this week since Allegheny County has this stay-at-home advisory. No one gives a fuck.
I know.
Like,
I know.
no one.
I know.
Everywhere I've went, they've been packed. I've seen restaurants packed.
Yeah.
People aren't wearing masks. No one, because people are like, you know what? Enough is enough. Like, I've had it. Like, I'm done with this. And it's because they just tried to go a little bit too far. And there's human nature. We can only take so much.
Well, that's where, again, to my point, you know, okay, so we kind of hodgepodged our way through this, and you know, I'll go under the belief that by the middle of next year, you know, or toward the end of next year, we will, because that's what pandemics do. It takes that long to get through it, anyways. And then we have a vaccine now too. That's a variable.
Yeah.
Just sitting over here, we're going to get through it.
Yes,
but we've hodgepodged our way through it in terms of how we reacted governmentally, socially. You know, we've kind of like just feeling our way through. We can't have this happen again. And then maybe there are 10 or 12 or 50 years before it happens again. But we got to have something in place, something.
Sure.
Now, people were saying that Bush had a plan and Obama had a plan, and I don't think there was ever really a plan.
I don't think so either.
We thought that it was inevitable, it was really going to happen. I mean, Bill Gates likes to take credit now that he predicted it, and Fauci said that he predicted it. Well, okay, if you want a pat on the back, I'll give you one.
Right,
It's not helping us right now, right? But we got to have something so this kind of clusterfuck doesn't happen the next time. And if we don't, shame on us.
Yeah, and I think I agree completely. And I think we have to also have the media be on board with whatever that plan is.
That'll never happen.
But that's the problem, right? So look, they created the coronavirus task force in January, right? When the first case was, they created this task force, and the media was like, "This is fucking terrible. Why are you doing this? Cut off travel to China or from China. This is terrible. Why are you doing this?" It's like no matter what happened, no matter what the government
were offended.
did. Yeah, like no
it
matter.
Comes down to their feelings, Rocco.
That's a whole.
Oh, it comes down to their feelings.
That's a whole other. Everything's about feelings anymore, and it's like if you're offended, that's your problem.
Right.
Like that's how I look at it. Like I'm sorry, that's my worldview these days. But again, that comes down to like regardless of what the government did or didn't do, no matter what it was wrong in the media's eyes.
Right.
So then the media fed people, and to people, it was wrong, and a large part of the population that were Trump haters. Like the fact that politicians were like Cuomo was saying, I don't want to trust this vaccine. Like Trump didn't make the fucking vaccine. Pfizer did.
Right.
Like, are you shitting me? Like that's just a stupid
Pretty
comment.
astonishing.
Yeah, like to make that comment.
Yes, agreed.
Like, Pfizer, a large pharmaceutical company, created a vaccine that's 95% effective, which is basically like the measles vaccine.
Unheard of.
In that record time,
right.
I don't trust it because Trump made it. No, he didn't. Like, Trump's not in the laboratory making a fucking vaccine. It's just not it. And it's become so political. And that's the problem. Like, that's where we fucked up as a nation. We made this political. People just didn't say, okay, we got to put our differences aside with Trump. We've got to put our differences aside as Republicans and Democrats. Let's solve this problem together.
Right.
They use it for political gain. Like, look how long it took to get coronavirus relief bills. And this once they've still been debating over it.
Right.
It's like, how fucking hard is it? Like, just help the people that need it, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, Oh my God! Yeah, I know people that haven't even gotten their check yet, man. And they don't really even need it, but they're entitled to it.
Yeah,
they've never gotten it.
Yes, and people got one check, right? One stimulus check, and it's been how long? We've been locked down for fucking 8 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
What do you expect people to do? Like, people that couldn't work, that their businesses were shut down. And I always say, like, in 2 years, we're going to look back as a country and say, what the fuck did we let happen?
Yeah.
We let the government come in and say, you can't open your hair salon because it's dangerous. But Walmart can stay open. The big corporations that make a shit ton of money, they can stay open. But you have a better chance of regulating the safety of the people in your business, you can't stay open. You're non-essential. Like, what the fuck is that?
It's a politics play.
Right, that's exactly right.
It's absolutely it's politics play, and it's whatever lobbying group in certain states has more influence as to what businesses stayed open or were deemed essential as opposed to others.
Yes.
And I know firsthand how that goes, and if anyone wants to tell me that's not the truth, then we'll just have to agree to disagree. But there's no bullshit that definitely favors, and politics was certainly played in this pandemic when it came to how businesses were able to run and who got paid, who didn't get paid.
Yeah.
And that's politics. I get it. So let's turn our attention back to the way we vote again, because I'm a big believer that absentee ballots should be a vehicle for people because of work-related issues or health cannot show up and vote at the allotted time on the day of the election.
Yeah.
I do not believe that we should be voting by mail arbitrarily or voting by electronically in any way, shape, or form. I'm not even a big fan of electric ballots at the polls, to be honest with you. But the process of going and voting is American.
Yeah.
That should be cherished, and that should be done. And if by medically you can't do it, you get an exemption with an absentee ballots. Military overseas or on assignment, absolutely. If you can't make it because of work-related issues, I don't know how I feel about that. If you're out of state or something, maybe I could go for an out. But quite frankly, we know well in advance what day we vote.
Yeah.
It's a procedure.
Yes.
If the average person who's just sitting home can go to Walmart or Kmart or the grocery store or Home Depot or Lowe's, you can fucking vote.
100% agree. 100%.
To create paper ballots arbitrarily for anyone who wants them, fuck the system.
No, I agree.
The integrity of the system. And if anybody believes that it was completely full of integrity, regardless of which side you're on, I would disagree. It can't be.
No.
With human nature, there's no way a paper ballot system that both sides have accurate counts. There's no way with human nature, Rocco. No way.
Yep.
And they're finding that out now. When it may not be enough to sway the election, but there's corruption there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on mail-in ballots or absentee ballots should be one, you have to request it, and you have to have a reason to request it. It's not election week. It's not election month. It's election day. We vote on the day. You don't receive ballot. If you can't get your ballot in the mail a few days beforehand so it is received on election day, shame on you. Like that's what blew my mind when they were talking about, well, as long as it's postmarked. When they said that, I'm like, that is rot for fraud.
Yeah,
like,
I don't understand that either.
If you got the ballot in the mail, stick it. How hard is it to go? Doot, sign your fucking name, put it in a mailbox.
What about this changing your mind shit? Did you see that?
Yeah, you can go in and change your vote. I mean, this whole...
What the fuck is that?
I mean, maybe it's happened in the past, but it just hasn't been that, out there, I guess. I don't know. Like, that blew my mind. Like, you can change your vote. Like, you can change your mind. Like, I don't get that. Like, this election, like, paper ballots we should be doing. You go and vote. Like, even where I went to vote, I looked, like, my signature in the signature book from the last time I voted was completely different than the day I signed that day. Right. But no one questioned it. Right. I didn't have to give an ID.
Right.
Like, it was literally, like, I looked, I'm like, is that my fucking signature? No, I know it was. That's how I used to sign my name. But as I've gotten older and I just sign quicker and it looks less like my name, no one just like, yeah, here's your ballot, went and voted.
I didn't like the ballot system this way this time because when I got my ballot, I filled out who I was going to vote for, and this worker walked me over and looked down at my ballot to show me how to put it in the machine and looked at my entire slate.
Interesting. Okay.
Extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's any fraud, but it doesn't give me the level of privacy that I deserve to have.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's interesting.
And I was very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, I would have been too. Like, luckily where I went, same process, but the guy just said, all you do is slide it in like that, and just kind of looked away.
She kind of grabbed it with me and let me just do this for you. And it was just like, okay. And then same thing, my wife was behind me, and same thing happened to her. Like she was getting she wanted to see, and where that's fucked up is, who I vote for.
Yeah.
And based upon where I vote and where I live, no one in that community should be knowing who I vote for if I don't want to tell them.
Exactly. I agree completely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's no one's fucking business.
No, that's the whole point of the system. Is it's
very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, this whole system, I think, moving forward, they've got to get it figured out, because we can't have another election like this. And I feel like if we don't figure out what happened here, not saying for or to change the results, but just to make sure there was no wide-scale fraud, because we need to make sure our elections moving forward have integrity. Because if they don't, like, what does that mean for democracy in this country? I mean, think about it. I mean, if you can't trust the elections,
right?
Like, what does that do for guys like you and I?
Well, the natural thought would be that we're going to move toward a technologically driven voting system, but I don't think that's healthy. I think the archaic manner of physically going and voting should have some safeguards in there to make it full of integrity, not lack thereof.
The more technology you add to the mix, the easier it is, I believe, to manipulate.
Certainly. Isn't that what they're saying now? Isn't that whole that's Trump's? So I did not really fully understand all of the points of this case.
Okay. There's many
Can you
cases.
give me some bullet points as to what the overall theme of what they are saying happened?
Well, so there's a few, right?
So what are they?
So there's the ones about just Republican poll watchers weren't given the opportunity to view the ballots
in certain cities.
Yeah, that's a legal requirement.
Yeah, that happened in Philadelphia and some other cities.
Like in Michigan. Okay. There were ballots that didn't have signature verification. That's one thing. But the big one is this Dominion voting systems, right?
Okay.
They're talking
about. They knew about that before the election.
Well, right, and so did, and people complained about it in the past. Like Texas didn't use it because they said it was, ripe for fraud. Democrats in 2018, they had issues with it, and the software, the Smartmatic software, as I guess is something that's what they're basically saying is, or the crux of what they're saying for the wide scale fraud is that Dominion voting systems and the Smartmatic software has been used around the world to manipulate elections, to basically change elections. It can just change votes.
Right.
And what they said is by looking at the data and the mathematics in the algorithm, they can show that this was used in this election. They said there were instances where the same amount of votes were flipped from one to the other, and 20 minutes later, the same number in a different state. So it was like an algorithm that was doing it. Now, again, there's no hard evidence that's been shown. Maybe there's affidavits, but we don't know. But that's part of what they're alleging, that they use this software and this algorithm to basically go in, know how many votes they have to flip, but where they screwed up. And what people have said, I think part of it is they didn't think Trump was going to get so many votes. That's why they stopped counting on election night, because they had to change the algorithm to make sure that they could flip as many votes. Again, that could be all conspiracy theory. That's part of what they're alleging.
Okay.
But the bigger piece is that they've looked at the mathematics, right? The statistical anomalies. And just take an example. They're saying, okay, in Michigan, in this one instance of time, 340,000 votes were taken away from Trump and added to Biden. And then 20 minutes later, in a different state, the exact same number of votes moved. So like counts were changing at the same numerical intervals, and that's what they're saying. Now, again, this is yet to be proven.
Yeah,
but that's what they're alleging.
Okay.
So it's look, if that shit happened, like that could be the biggest crime
in history
in the history of this country. Yeah. Now, who knows if that's the case? That's just what they're saying. I won't believe any of it until I see it.
And there obviously there's a time constraint here, right? He's got to take office.
Yeah, I mean
20th, right?
Yeah, I mean there is a time constraint, but look, if it's something that happened, we got to get that shit sorted out because that's scary.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, I think any citizen would want that.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand. Like, why? Like, if Biden and those guys are so confident about the win, just let the audits happen. Let us figure this out.
Well, to his credit, I think he hasn't come out. I mean, him personally.
Yeah, no, I agree.
He's let the process just play itself out.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's a lot of the far left Democrats have been like, just accept it. Just in the media, the same thing. Just accept the election.
No question.
In 2016, the same thing could have been said on the other side, right? Just accept it. Like, no, Russia collusion, and we dealt with that for 4 years. And I'm not saying this is going to change anything, and I'm not saying that there was widespread fraud.
Right.
But if there are these anomalies and these things that are happening, finding ballots, in the Georgia recount, they found thousands of ballots. Like, we've got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Like, this is
the answer
democracy.
Isn't the answer that it's not enough to change the results based upon the numbers is not good enough. That's not a good enough answer.
No, not at all.
There shouldn't be one.
No.
So I know that, again, back to states' rights, federal authority. What about the concept of having a presidential election day separate from the election day of all the other offices state-related?
Interesting.
And having that election run by the federal government, a complete independent branch of the government, both parties there to equal amount of overseers, having one company they contract with to do it all, and have the entire process run by having a federal program for the presidency.
Okay.
For the presidency, where it's not relying on the individual weird, quirky state laws and how because some states have some weird elector things going on. I think was it Missouri and Maine that they split their.
Yeah, there's one. I think it's Nebraska and Maine. There's one congressional district where you can get one electoral vote.
They can run their own elections any way they want, but why can't the president's election be so important that job is a federally mandated election that's uniform in the way it's administered in every state under one program?
No, because I'll play the flip side of that. I think congressional elections are actually more important than the president. Representatives and senators, because to me, they're the ones that really make the laws.
I would agree.
And so how do you distinguish saying the president's the more important election to have? But I think having the right representatives.
He's got his finger on the button, man. I mean, that's pretty fucking important there.
No, that is important. But I feel like sometimes we get away from.
You're right.
From how government works.
I get it.
The president is a figurehead, and they make certain decisions, and they can do certain.
That's why
things.
They call it the executive branch.
Yeah, but Congress makes laws. Congress is
right,
and we don't vote like we do in the presidential election, in the midterm elections, and that's a scary thing too. I feel like people should be voting more in the midterm elections.
No one cares. It's not sexy.
Right. That's exactly right. And
not covered in the media enough.
Right. But that's where the balance of power lies. They're talking about these Georgia runoffs.
I know. This is going to be insane.
It's crazy. Like, they're putting so much money into these races because it's all about the balance. The president's one thing. It's about the balance of power in Congress, and that's what's really important. And yeah, I mean, could you do a national election? Yeah, but then how do you make that congruent with the Electoral College and how each state has certain electors? And I mean, it's just.
Oh, you're saying where the strength of the votes came in each part of the state?
Yeah, like I think you'd have to almost fundamentally change the entire system.
Yeah, you're right.
That's what I think. It's but I mean, it's an interesting concept.
I don't think the average person even understands how different the voting procedures are from state to state. I don't think I fully understand it.
Yeah, I mean, they're
understood.
They're definitely different processes. I mean, states are just handled differently. They different times, different manners of
which is kind of cool. It makes it's a unique part of our country.
Absolutely, and again, that's what makes America unique. That this whole federalist system, and I hate coming back to the pandemic when they start comparing. Well, our response, we should have responded like Sweden, or we should have responded like Korea or China or all these places, but it's not the same. You can't make an apples to apples comparison.
That's nationalism over there,
right?
Right.
The governments are set up completely different. We have 51 governments here.
Right.
You have the federal government, you have the state governments, and you can't force people to do certain things. And it's it's just it's a different playing field. And I get so frustrated when I hear people make those arguments. It just shows me a fundamental lack of understanding of just the way countries work and the way government response works, and just the laws in and of themselves. Like, there's only certain things we can do in this country compared to other countries, and that's where I think, again, where people got really into these, the extremes. They take these extreme positions, but they don't understand, do those positions even make sense, or are they factually valid? Like, that's what's scary, right? You're making these arguments that we should have done this, we should have done that, but could we have even done that legally? Like, people aren't even looking at that. They're just saying, well, they did it this way, we should have done it that way. Well, we can't do it that way. You know what I mean? Like, there's just certain fundamental differences,
Yeah, it's... I think, again, we're in this country, we're quick to blame.
Yeah.
And, it's the social media era where we can look for quick answers.
Sure.
Oh, well, just do that. You just can't do that.
No, right, exactly. You just can't say, well, yeah, we should. Well, yeah. If it was that easy, we would have fucking done it.
Some of our politicians are doing that. So talk a little bit about the lockdowns again. Like, what do you, like, here in Pennsylvania, obviously, the Wolf administration is going to have us. It's coming in the next couple of days. Me being in the real estate end of it, I'm hoping we don't get shut down again. But
I don't think.
You don't think?
No. And
okay.
Here's why I don't think.
Okay.
And again, this is pure speculation, but Pennsylvania is running out of money, right? We're running out of money. We didn't get any federal relief yet. If Pennsylvania forces a lockdown and goes and closes essential businesses or non-essential businesses, people are going to collect unemployment again. Where's that money coming from? Pennsylvania doesn't have it. So I think they're going to do whatever they can to avoid shutting down businesses. They may put, like, hey, like, kind of like what Allegheny County did. It's a stay-at-home advisory. You can leave to go to work, but we don't want you going anywhere else.
What the restaurants, though?
Well, that interesting question. So people were in the dark about that, right? This week they said, well, we have the stay-at-home advisory, but they didn't say restaurants have to shut down. Well, I was at a restaurant last night. There was a shit ton of people there. So, we were there. I was there for a work function, so technically it was work. And the stay-at-home advice, it's not an order, it's an advisory, and it says that you can leave your house for work. So it was a work function, so I was there. But again, people aren't going to listen to lockdowns. Like, I think we're past the point of people actually listening to lockdowns. I just don't think it'll work. And I don't think Pennsylvania will try and shut down businesses again because they don't have the money to do it.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point.
That's why I don't think they have done it. And I also think that it's just, they understand that it may be political suicide because people will only put up with so much. And again, like I said earlier, when those new kind of mask orders came down, like, I've watched people on social media, they were on the one side of, like, yes, we have to stay home, protect. They were like, don't tell me what to do in my house. Don't tell me who I could spend time with on the holidays. Like, people lost it. Right. And that was that one step too far. And I think that's why, like, even when the whole stay-at-home advisory came, I'm like, man, I wonder what's going to... I had the same question. What's going to happen with restaurants? I drove by restaurants since that, and they were packed. Same people there.
Aren't we still under an advisory to stay home? Haven't we always been under an advisory to stay home and don't unnecessarily go out if you don't have to? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm so confused.
Confused. I mean, we're all confused. And that's the problem. Like, no one knows what the hell is really going on. So I think people have just decided, I'm going to do what I think is best for me and the people I'm closest with. I think that's what people think.
Why does Tom Wolfe not see how heavy-handed his actions are? What's blocking him, do you think, from seeing the reality of the damage, the literal damage he has done to the people he's governing? I mean, if you love the people of Pennsylvania so much, why do you not see how you've hurt so many of them?
I think he puts his head in the sand. Like, I really feel like there was two sides of this, right? There were governors that went draconian, and there were governors that went practical. I think the guys that went, or the guys and females that went draconian, took those measures, they don't care. Yeah. They put their head in the sand. Like, I'm the governor. These are my rules. Like, look at what's happening in Michigan. Yeah. Like, that chick's crazy. Like, crazy. And it's like, come on. Like, for, like, completely like a medieval queen. Like, we can't have this shit. And I think, look, I'm sure Tom Wolfe tried to do what was best, but if you read that court case that went, to the Third Circuit.
You think?
What's that?
You don't think other shit was at play?
Oh, I'm sure there was. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you read that court case, he wasn't at any of his task force meetings. No one on his task force, this was testimony in the court case. No one on his task force had or epidemiology experience. They had no idea what essential or non-essential was. They just made it up as they went.
I'm aware of that.
So it's like, maybe he did have good intentions to start, but then they just got so wrapped up. And it's almost like when you realize you fuck up and lie, you have to just keep that lie going and make it even bigger.
Right.
And that's what I feel like happened here. Like, they, instead of pulling back and saying, you know what, we fucked up. Let's shift gears. Like, nope, we just got to keep going down this path.
That's the problem with America.
That's right.
The inability to do that.
Right. It's like, let's just keep going down this path. Like, we got to lock down again because that's what we did in the past, and we told you it worked. We have to do it again when we know it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're trying to start doing this again. It's like, people are like, no, it didn't. If it worked in the first place, why are we doing it again? Mm-hmm. And if it didn't work in the first place, why are we doing it again?
The spirit of who we are as a people, I never underestimate that.
No.
But the devastation, I think, that was done to New York and part of New Jersey, New York City especially, and Los Angeles.
Yes.
And San Fran, to use just San Diego to a lesser extent, but just take L.A. and San Fran and New York. The damage to the socioeconomic portions of those areas, the damage is so bad they may never recover in terms of it may never look like it looked before the pandemic.
I agree.
I don't see a pathway for it to come back unless it's over 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, it's gonna take a decade and a half.
If it ever comes back.
Exactly,
because once they leave, society changes, people will assimilate into different kinds of lifestyles. There may not be a compelling reason to go back to the city.
Yeah, it's a shame, too, because those are two good cities, right? I mean, three good cities, New York, L.A., San Francisco, but one, just the policies they put in place, the tax policies, the way they handle things. I know people that have left California and left New York, like, personally, and they're just like, I'm not going to put up with this bullshit anymore. Like, I'm going to go somewhere where there's freedom and I have less taxes. I mean, the mayor of Los Angeles threatening to turn people's water and power off because they were having gatherings. Like, where do we live? It's like a Mideast country. Like, what the fuck? Like,
that's as draconian as you can possibly
Like, how
get.
does that even happen? Like, that's, and de Blasio closing schools last week in New York, but keeping restaurants open. And it's like, and there's been data that shows schools are the safest place.
Right.
Like, it's going to take a long time if they recover at all. I agree. And it's a shame because this pandemic has taught, at least the way I look at it, has showed me that Americans don't do well under pressure.
We've been exposed.
We've been exposed big time.
We definitely have been exposed.
We've become soft as a society.
No question.
We've become, extremely weak, and we want someone to take care of us. We want someone else to. People are so willing to just let the government handle it for them, take care of them. I believe the government's job is to take care of those who can't take care of themselves.
Absolutely.
Not to take care of those who choose not to take care of themselves.
Agreed.
And too many people fall into that latter category. And this pandemic has exposed that in this country, has exposed how weak we've become as a society.
Okay, so in prior years in my life, my viewpoint of the Democratic Party, the criticism always was there was too much social programs, too much social engineering, too much money being given away to the public.
Okay.
That's the conservative viewpoint.
Sure.
And of course, the liberal viewpoint would be that the Republican Party had too many conservatives. They didn't do anything for the little guy. All they care about is business. They're pro-business. They hate certain ethnicities or whatever. That's what I grew up with.
Yeah, sure.
The funny part about it is now is like I look at both parties being equally fucked up in regards to taking responsibility away from the average citizen. I think the Democrats still have the championship of giving away free shit.
Yeah.
I've always thought that, and I don't think that's changed.
Yes.
But the Republicans, probably starting with Bush too.
Yeah.
You know, after 9/11, it was easy to get people to feel better, so we're going to give them stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to go along with it.
Yeah.
Not just corporately, you know, and and people hate you when you say things like this because you're a mean-spirited person, but you're right. The job of our governments, is not cradle to grave, take care of me.
Exactly.
And if you are wanting that, I'd say there's something fundamentally wrong with your philosophy of life and what you're doing for you and your family, or what you wish for you and your family.
I completely agree.
We can't sustain it.
No, we can't.
But corporate shouldn't be getting bailed out either. It's got to be the citizen has to mean more than a corporation does to our governments.
Yeah, no,
and that hasn't happened either.
No, I completely agree, and that is, you know, that is so frustrating with these you know, giving away free shit. Like let's they want Biden to do an executive order on day one to forgive student loans.
Yeah, don't get me started.
What happens to guys like me who, you know, I spent $100,000 to go to law school, and I have them almost all paid off by now? Are someone going to cut me a check for the $50,000 that I've already paid off? Like, what's going to happen to that? Like,
okay, see, here's where I struggle. I have heard the argument now from both sides, and I think that college is way too expensive.
Yeah, okay,
I think there's predatory college loans that are done. The whole mechanism's fucked up.
Yeah, okay.
The government has created the monster and enabled these colleges to charge what they charge. I just think the system's broke. So why not fix the system?
Right.
But not just throw money at the broken system to reward the people who suffered through it.
Yeah, and here's the thing.
We made it out of free will. Decisions were made out of free will.
And I'm going to say something pretty harsh, and I don't care. It's like the people that went to school, that took out student loans, that, you know, are able to pay them back, you know, typically doctors, lawyers, engineers, accountants. The people that are complaining about student loans went in and fucking took basket weaving or some bullshit major that they can't get a job. Like, you got to take some individual responsibility. If you're going to take out loans and go to college, you need to pick a major that you can actually become employed in and be able to pay those back. Now they're looking for the government. Well, I can't get a job. Well, you majored in fucking rock and roll studies. Like, what the fuck did you expect? Yeah. And now the government has to bail you out and pay off your loans.
That's a good point.
I'd be
it's
fine
part of the equation.
I'd be fine if the government says, we'll forgive interest.
Something.
Eliminate interest on all student loans, and then make student loans harder to get. Because that's the problem. It's so easy to get the money.
There's no question.
Like, y'all go to college and
no
fucking
question.
Go and have
then
people
that's
pay
why
for it.
Colleges have increased every year their rates, because they know the money's guaranteed to be given.
I went to W&J. I graduated in '99. I think the last year I was there, it was like $26,000. Now, we could have never afforded. I had an academic scholarship, and I took out student loans. It's like $65,000 a year right now. That was 20 years ago.
Right. It's insane.
Like, in some of the professors are still there. It's not like they all of a sudden like have all this amazing shit to justify almost a 3x increase in cost, but it's because you can get student loans to pay for it. And that's what's bullshit. I mean,
the system's broke.
The system's broke. And then we keep talking about, like, you know, free health care and free this and raising the minimum wage to $15. And it's, look, that whole discussion with minimum wage is exactly that. The minimum wage you are legally required to pay somebody, not the wage you have to pay somebody to support a family.
Why is there a minimum wage?
So because of labor laws back in the early 1900s.
Why can't the market dictate what a job delivering a pizza yields based upon competitive want of that job?
So here's
I'm sorry.
No. I understand.
No one's ever explained that to me.
The whole point of the minimum wage is it's the minimum wage you have to pay somebody. The government says, look, you have to pay somebody the minimum of something. So
why though?
That's a good question. Like, you're stumping me because I don't really know. Like, that's a good question. Like,
because someone will pay someone like $1 an hour to deliver a pizza. I don't believe that would happen.
So we're not getting into like these terrible labor situations where now you start paying. So again, I think it would be where now you start paying people low, they accept and they unionize, and then the whole landscape changes. And I think, I don't know. This is just me purely speculating.
Okay.
I'm not a historian to know that.
Okay.
But my whole point is raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour will destroy
No question.
small businesses. And what people don't understand is
It's not a career to work at McDonald's.
No, if you want to make $15 an hour, like learn new skills.
Of course.
Like do better, and
of course
you'll make more. But if they raise that up to $15 an hour, okay, you're like, great, I'm making $15 an hour now. But guess what? Your food's going to cost twice as much. Everything you do is going to cost twice as much because the businesses are going to pass it on.
That requires thinking, man.
I know.
That's multi-step thinking.
I know,
we don't do that as society. We think
you're right.
We think of the initial thing in front of our face.
Yeah.
That's easy. Make it $15 an hour.
Yeah.
Everybody will be in good shape.
Yep.
The cost of how that happens, that's too much thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
It is.
No, you're 100% right. And that's what's frustrating me about politicians on both sides. We're taking these crazy stances. And it's like, no, let's think through this. And so, the student loan thing is the prime example. Like, we can't just forgive people student loans. If you want to reduce or eliminate interest rates or
help them,
but don't, because then it pisses people off like me, where I've worked my ass off and I've paid off most of my student loans. I still have student loans to pay off, and so does my wife. But is someone cutting me a check back for the money I paid? Like, I don't expect that.
There's no equitable way of doing it. And then how many years do you go back? Like, what if you paid off your student loan like 7 years ago? Why are you not entitled to the same type of benefit?
Right. And
where do you cut it off?
And people that took out student loans to major in gender studies or something, like, who knows? Like, I don't know. Like, where did they put something in place? You had to have majored in something you just can't get a job because of the job market, or you can't get a job because you majored in something that no one's gonna gives a shit about.
But we don't want to. But see, the beautiful thing is you have the freedom to choose what you want to do with your life.
Right.
But the same right, because you have that freedom, don't then expect the government to reward you for that freedom. Do you see what I mean? Like, if you want the government to pay for your education, then you should only have 2 or 3 options, and you don't want to live in a world that way.
That brings up a great fucking point. Is we talk about this socialism. It's like people want socialism and capitalism. They want socialism and freedom, and it's like you can't have both. If you want all this free shit, you're going to lose a lot of your freedoms. Understand that, but people don't get that.
Of course.
And
or options.
Yes, and it's just like, come on, like, think about it logically. It's, I was talking to my son last night. He was watching my daughters after we came home. We were just talking, because he's in college, right? We were just talking about different things. And it's just interesting to see, like, how his generation, and I feel fortunate that, that he's a smart kid and he's got a good head on his shoulders and he sees the world a certain way. But it's just so interesting, like, how his generation, like, they just expect shit. Like, they're this soft generation. Everybody got a trophy generation. And it's like, that's not how the world works. The world is hard.
Yeah.
You're going to get kicked in the nuts every once in a while.
Right.
And you've got to be able to deal with that. And that's what I've always, from the time he was a kid, I always told him, not to sound like an asshole, but second place is the first loser.
Yeah.
Someone was better than you or worked harder than you.
Yep.
And you got to understand, going into the world, that's how it works. And if you want to live somewhere where everything's equal and we all get the same shit, that's not America.
Right.
Go somewhere else. But people are trying to turn America into that.
Right.
But yet still afford themselves the freedom America gives.
Right.
Which is, like, I see these people talking about this socialism while they're on their fucking iPhone live streaming on Facebook, which are 2 companies that were created because of the capitalist system we have here in America.
100%.
It's like, it's just like so comical to me that these young kids are talking about this shit, but they're fundamentally supporting capitalism while talking about socialism
every single day.
It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Do you not even understand?
Look,
we're down a rabbit hole now.
No, it's just I've got it on very good authority from multiple people who've witnessed it firsthand. That something as stupid as this is, like, Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Flies first class.
No shit.
All the fucking time.
No shit. He has like an Audi, like, R8.
I'm just saying, and he has every right to. I'm not knocking his right to do it. Exactly. I applaud him.
Yeah, absolutely.
But don't get on the megaphone and make your whole career based upon destroying the golden goose that you enjoy, that provides you your lifestyle.
Yes.
It's the biggest hypocrisy imaginable to me.
Look,
he's not the only one.
No, and look, I'm all for equality of opportunity. not equality of results.
Of course
and we get very fundamentally confused as Americans.
No doubt.
People think it should be equality means we all get the same shit. No, we all have the ability, and we have, there's I'm sure there's certain things in society that we need to fix, right?
No question.
But we need to have equality of opportunity. Doesn't mean you get the same result. Like, if you want to work as hard as if people say I've benefited because I'm a white man, I'm like, okay, well, show me someone of a different demographic that worked 18 hours a day, 6 days a week for the past 20 years, and is 3 steps behind me. And I'll give you that argument any day of the week. Like, there's certain things we have to start looking at and having bigger discussions about. There are fundamental problems in this country. There are fundamental inequalities.
And that's where our focus should be.
Right.
Not fucking with, this is like an interesting subject to me, because we spend an equal or more amount of time trying to equal out results as opposed to equaling out the opportunity.
Yes. Correct
the opportunity differential.
Yes.
And really put our energy there to make the playing field, and I'm for doing it at any cost.
Yes,
because no one should be discriminated against,
absolutely,
in any way, and no one should be discriminated against in regards to opportunity.
Absolutely right.
But don't start fucking with the results. Let the individuals determine their own results on an equal playing field.
I completely agree, and that's
crazy to me.
But people get hung up on that. Like, it's just like, no, we're not. We're not guaranteed equal results in this country. We should be guaranteed equal opportunities. And I agree. We need to eliminate racial discrimination, gender discrimination. We need to do whatever we can. We'll never eliminate it totally. Let's just be honest. We'll never eliminate it 100% from society. They're just evil, shitty people. But we need to do whatever we can to make the playing field equal.
Yes.
And then
we didn't spend any time in there. We spent time trying to equal the results because people feel bad.
Yeah.
He made $100,000 a year, but you didn't. So you only made 30.
Yeah.
So we're going to give you 50 more, so you're not quite there, but you feel a little better about your circumstances.
We're going to make him pay more in taxes.
It's insane.
So we can give you a little bit more money. It's like, insane. No, how about you just work harder? Like, that's my whole thing. Like, I'm all for everybody succeeding. Like, I love when friends of mine succeed. I love seeing people's success. That's capitalism at
Absolutely.
work. And we have to give people the ability to succeed and create those playing fields. But people need to get off of if my result's not the same of yours, it's because I'm this or I'm that, or you got this or you got that. It's like, maybe there are instances where that happen. Maybe it's just I worked fucking harder. Some people just don't want to work hard, and that's okay. Some people are okay just working a 9 to 5,
of course,
making whatever they make and do it.
Which makes the country great,
right? Like me, like freedom. That's not me. Like I'm just. But don't fault me because of that. Yeah. Don't say it's because I get all these benefits. No, I just choose to work.
It's
harder.
An envy thing, and it's just symptomatic of society. And I think that our social media and our news media in general feed off of that, and we're all suckers. We go to the trough because we're marketed. We've been marketed by slick advertising agents, advertising agencies for decades, and now more than ever. I mean, they got our neurons firing every which way but Sunday, right? I mean, but I think the envy thing rears its ugly head, and it just does it in regards to not just politically, but just how we live our lives in society in general. And it reared its ugly head during this pandemic a lot too. Unfortunately,
people need to channel envy in a different way. Like, look, if I see someone more successful than me, that motivates me, because I believe that I can do anything that anybody else can. That's just my mentality. That's how my brain works. So if I see someone that's way more successful than me, that doesn't make me jealous, or it's just like, fuck, I can do that. Like, if he did it, I can do it. How do I solve the problem to get there? Too many people say, well, fuck that dude. Like, that's bullshit.
Exactly right.
That's not fair. It's like, well, it is fair. Like, he worked hard, or she worked hard.
Fair is a fucked up word.
Well, it's right. It's like life.
so wrong.
Life isn't fair, and we have to just understand that. If life was fair, it would be boring as fuck.
Yep, no doubt.
And people don't get that, and we've got to get away from talking about fairness and equality of results, and I believe in fairness and equality of opportunity.
Yep.
Let's fix that problem, and then I think a lot of the problems we have in this country will solve themselves.
There's no question. Yeah, if people see the opportunity and believe that it's been delivered in a fair way to them.
Yeah.
And they feel, because that buys confidence into the system.
Yeah.
Then more people are going to be encouraged to use that opportunity.
Yes.
But when you're always talking about making it a tad bit easier on the other end and guaranteeing the result, there's no incentive there. We're humans. We're naturally lazy.
Yes, exactly.
So that's who we are.
I mean, you need resistance in life to grow.
Amen.
Like that's how fitness works. That's how everything works. That when you face resistance, you grow.
Amen.
And if we keep taking resistance away from people, no one grows, and you stay stagnant. And
Amen.
how do we make this country and society better if we're not growing as people? You've got to face resistance. I'm sorry if shit's hard every once in a while, or if you struggle, just keep fucking going forward. Like people quit too easily. And
they oftentimes quit before it actually all the good stuff happens.
That's it. I've watched, and I've done it in the past, and I've watched it with people I know. It's like they were so close. They just fucking gave up. And it's like, you were right there. You just had to push. But that's when it gets the hardest. Like right before you succeed,
I know.
It's the most painful. And
I
people
know.
just don't like
That's
pain.
pretty uniform in its reality.
Dude, I look at my career path, 100%. It was the hardest before it got the easiest.
Yeah.
And it's painful, but I just had to tell myself, trust the process, bet on myself, keep moving forward, and eventually I'll get there. And I did, and it sucked for a while. Like, it was hard, and like, what the fuck? But you did it, or I did it, and then I got to where I am. And I just keep, and I want everybody to be able to do that. Like, I want everybody to succeed. Like, all of my close friends, they're all great guys and girls, and I want them all to be super successful. And I'm proud to say they're my friends, and I love them all. And it's, I want that for everybody. And I think if we started as a country and as a society looking at one another and saying, I want that person to be better too. How can I help them? Or how can we help each other become better? Society would change. We're too apt to look at what's wrong and the gaps and the unfairness and point out these things without trying to actually solve the problem.
No question.
We're quick to point out the problems. We're very slow to try and present solutions to the problems.
Well, our elected leaders also help creating a system that keeps de-emphasizing achievement.
Yeah.
They keep creating a system that will give you a little taste of something as a reward for the vote, or a reward to be civilly okay or socially okay, but not showing you that, hey, this is a wonderful path for your own endeavors, making it easier in terms of the opportunity for people to enter areas of industry. Or that's where we're fucking up, man. We're not making sure that our playing fields are level and fighting discrimination on the start, on the entry point.
Yeah.
Again,
exactly right.
We're still focused on equating and equalizing results. It's the most unfair thing imaginable.
Yeah.
It doesn't play out in sports that way. It's so funny where I have some very ultra progressive friends, and they talk about, just always being either they use the big word disenfranchised, or they used just things aren't fair for them, but then they'll go watch and root for their sports team.
Yeah.
And I almost want to say when their sports team loses, that's really fucking unfair that they lost that game.
Right.
Are you going to, take that victory away from them? Or should the Steelers give the Browns a couple more touchdowns because they didn't quite score enough in that game? It's so fundamentally, it's in their face all the time.
So true.
Competition's there for them to see, and they participate in it.
Yes.
But for the rest of their life, they're trying to equate results so no one feels bad.
Yeah.
Fuck your feelings.
Those words were coming.
I'm sorry.
No, look,
I can't. I'm harsh, but that's it.
No, but we're there as a society. Like, we've got to get over it. Like, look, there's offensive shit. Like, if you're, like I always say, if you're offended, that's your problem, not mine. Like, we are too much as a society, or too quick as a society to worry about someone's feelings. Like, I'm sorry, life is not meant to be easy, right? Life is challenging. You face challenges. You face resistance. Part of that is being offended. Who gives a shit? Like, get over it. Like, it's like, what? Like, I watched the show. We were talking about The Office. Like, can you imagine if that show was on TV today? It would have been fucking canceled after the first episode.
Well, even Seinfeld. Go back to Seinfeld. It would never have been.
Like, how did society go from that, which was like 8 years ago, to where we are right now, where everything is so offensive? And that's what's happened. Like, that's why this other shit that's happening in the world about, equal results and socialism and all this shit, it's because we got to worry about people's feelings. I don't want to
be
do that
unoffendable.
anymore.
That's my phrase.
Yeah.
Be unoffendable.
Yes, exactly. Because it's the truth. Like I said, and it's a quote from somewhere. If you are offended, it's your problem, not mine. Like, you're the one taking offense, not me. I'm going to say what I want to say. I'm going to say what I believe. That's my belief or my opinion. If it offends you, that's on you.
Right.
Too fucking bad.
Right.
Like, we need to start being stronger as people in a society and saying, you know what? We can stand up for what we believe in and not be offended because someone believes something different.
Right.
Or says something different.
Right.
And it's gotten tiring to see it happen. I'm just like, jeez. Like, get over yourself, for fuck's sake.
Before we split, though, you've had some growth in your law practice, and you guys are making some moves.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot to tell me about this.
I mean, it's been a blast. I mean, this year has been a blessing. You know, I got a great team with me now. I hired, I have 2 attorneys working for me now.
Right.
David and Matt, they're both fantastic. And Mia, who's my assistant, she's working with us. And we've just been expanding this year. And it's been... it's one of those years where you kind of look back and you're just like, how the hell did this happen? And I think it's, when I started my practice, I wanted to set myself apart as we do things differently. We're not the traditional boring law firm. Like, we understand business, we understand people. And to me, the way I practice law, it's all about the client. It's all about the relationship.
Right.
It's not about the transaction, because I don't look at a client as a transaction. I look at every client as a potential friend in a long-term relationship. And luckily, I have a team of people around me that think about it the same way. And we're just starting to, to catch that, upward swing. And I'm just excited to see what happens, next year. We did the website. We're focusing on some more marketing now. And it's been a blast, man. I mean,
what I love about your attitude is that you saw the year for what it was, and you dealt with it with you and your family, and you maneuvered like we all are maneuvering, but it never was a hindrance to what your goals were.
No.
You found a way through it.
That's it. That's exactly it. It's just,
I've tried to live the same way. You have to.
Yeah.
You can't let outside forces dictate your goals.
No, I mean, you're so true. And I remember when this all started, it's like, okay, I know what I can do and what I can control. And that's what I did. And I just doubled down on controlling that. And I think what else has helped me in my law practice, I've become laser focused in really, not letting things distract me, or the shiny object or the shiny business. And I've just become really focused in hiring people to do the things I was doing in the past, like having an amazing assistant like Mia. She does so much shit for us that I don't even have to think about, which is great. And now I've hired a marketing person who's going to be starting with me to do the things that we're just taking time, but it's not the best use of my skills.
Got it.
And just being very focused and finding, 2 good attorneys to really complement what I do.
Yeah.
Like, I know that we're in for a great year next year, and I'm excited to just work with the new clients we have. And it's just, I feel like I'm at that point in my life where I just fucking love what I do. And it's, I know not a lot of lawyers say that, and I really do. Like, I love it. I don't feel like I work. I feel very fortunate that I've built a business where I love the people I work with. Right. I don't ever feel like I'm working. I feel like I'm just running a business and just living my life. And it's been a great year, and it's hard. I mean, it's not easy. I always look at it like, I went from being a solo lawyer to now I have the salary of 3 people that I have to pay for before I pay myself. Right. And that's a huge responsibility, because, I want to make sure they are taken care of. I want to make sure, and I've told them all, if you're not having fun here, it's not I want you to enjoy what you do. Shouldn't just be a job to you. We're a family, and we've got to build it a certain way. And if you guys just follow my lead, we'll be very successful. So I look at I put that pressure on me. And I had like an anxiety attack a couple of weeks ago. We pulled in my office one night. I was bringing a TV to our conference room that we bought. It was like a Friday night. My wife and the kids were in the car, and I just stopped for a second. I'm like, holy shit! Like I just realized I have all this payroll that I'm now responsible for. Like a lot of money that I'm responsible for before I pay myself or take care of us. But it was that, like, yes, this is what I wanted. Like, I'm here.
Growth.
Now it's growth, and it's like that resistance is making me stronger, making me better, and now I just want to keep pushing forward. And I'm excited for 2021, man. I'm ready for this year.
I'm excited for you.
Hey, man, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it all happen.
Hey, man, this has been great. And
now you have a part-time job because you're on once a month.
I appreciate every opportunity, because this is just great, just to sit down and have conversations.
Yeah,
and it's it's always enjoyable because we challenge each other, and
No
I
doubt.
like the discussion, and it's I would do this every fucking day if I had the
Well,
time to do it.
The medium lends itself. Your skill set and who you are as a person, your persona, is a perfect fit for this medium. And I've been some things are cooking for him in this medium. I don't know what he wants to release and what he doesn't want to release, but you and your thoughts and your philosophy deserve a larger audience.
I appreciate
so hopefully
that.
we're helping getting it out.
Yeah.
We're starting it here for you.
Yeah, no, we definitely are. We did start the podcast for my law firm, which we're
It's amazing.
It's starting, and we're going to do it. It's going to be 2 types of episodes. One are just going to be like the 10-15 minutes of me talking about a legal issue or even just like a business motivational topic.
Right.
And then the other episodes are going to be longer interviews like this, where I want to bring in clients and friends and showcase them and tell their story. And hopefully within that story, I can weave some education.
Yeah.
About the law and business, and really just have conversations. It'll never be like this because this is amazing. I have a little bit of a setup in our conference room, but this is a totally different world.
This is insane.
And you will definitely be one of the first guests. I'm excited for, man.
I'd be humbled. I don't know if anybody wants to hear my story.
A lot of people want to hear your story, man. It's going to be a good one. Looking forward to it.
My friend, always a great time.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being a part of this show.
Of course, man.
And,
it's my pleasure.
In a couple of weeks, we'll have you back again.
Hey.
I'm sure it's just going to get more entertaining as it goes along, right? And
absolutely.
But again, if I haven't thanked you enough, I want to do it on camera. That you were with me from the beginning, and and Rocco doesn't know it yet, but there is some panel shows coming up where he's going to be put in there, and I just got to find the right kind of diverse people, but I have a few in mind.
Good, it'll be fun, man. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, friends. On behalf of Rocco Cozza,
Thank
we're
you.
out.